The way that they connect with the caregivers. You know, our society is challenged like never before, and to have organizations like CaringKind that are focused on giving back and support.
And loneliness worsens the disease, and the disease worsens loneliness, and there's a feedback.
Because of them, I was able to really sit down and reflect on my journey. It's been healing for me to be able to share my story.
Awareness is not just to make people aware of the disease, but it's also to make people who are struggling with this and their families, to make sure that they're not stigmatized, to make sure that they're not isolated, to make sure that they're not alone.
There's a strength for this cause, and whether we're caretaking at the time, whether we're grieving for someone that we've lost, it is a strength in numbers.
To actually get human beings on the phone who take their time to talk to you, to offer support, to share their wisdom, their love, their support.
They're on the right track at the right time, in the time of our culture, when our community and our nation is getting older. CaringKind is actually putting a face to it. They're putting a message to it. They're putting support. They're putting resources behind it, so you don't feel like you're alone.
From their dementia hotlines, their support groups, their wander safety programs, to their family coaching and educational programs, excellence, responsiveness, empathy.
Nobody's doing the work that they're doing, which is focused on expanding better ways to take care of people, to reach out to families, to reach out to different communities, impoverished communities, people who just aren't getting the kind of attention that they need.
An honor to represent the ADDF and stand shoulder to shoulder with CaringKind, who punches so far above their weight.
Yes, these diseases are terrible. They're not something that anyone would ask for, but there is opportunity for help, there's opportunity for support, and there's opportunity for a quality of life that's meaningful and rich and continues to be rewarding.
I tell you, if you are afflicted or affected, there's a place that you can turn to when you need help. You know someone who does. That is CaringKind.
Start with a phone call. If I could share one thing, don't do it alone. Contact CaringKind and let them help you.
Good evening and welcome to CaringKind's Annual Research Symposium, Breakthroughs in Music, Sound, and Dementia Research. I'm Eleonora Tornatore-Mikesh, President and CEO of CaringKind, and on behalf of our entire organization, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to each of you for joining us this evening. CaringKind is one of its first charities focused in dementia, celebrating almost 47 years. One of the oldest charities. Our mission is to create, deliver, and promote comprehensive and compassionate care and support services for individuals and their families impacted by Alzheimer's disease and related dementia. Each year at our annual meeting, it is our privilege to share the work that we've done with you and to share new upcoming programs launching, as we are thrilled that music will be an element that's sprinkled within the CaringKind family. We have an incredible community gathered this evening of caregivers, clients, and community partners. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Jones. I'm the board co-chair, and I just want to say it's an honor for me to stand here tonight as someone who's had the privilege of serving on this board for almost 2 decades. Over that time, I've seen this organization grow and adapt to meet the needs of the Alzheimer's and dementia community, which seem to simultaneously be ever-changing and yet somehow also constant. What particularly excites me is what we've done in just the last few years. We've made bold, thoughtful investments in developing innovative programs not designed not just to support caregivers, although we have that, but also to ensure that individuals living with the disease are seen, heard, and truly supported. These are not just services, they are lifelines, and they represent our unwavering commitment to dignity, compassion, and progress. Before I go, on behalf of my fellow board members and the small but mighty CaringKind's staff, thank you for believing in this mission and for standing with us as we continue to push forward together.
In a moment, we will formally introduce our panelists and moderator. But first, Jeff and I continue to want to include you in the conversation of our vision as we expand our vision. Through deliberate research, data collection, and just as important, the stories of those living with the disease, we see how transformational it is to incorporate music-based interventions, and that's what really this evening is about. Once again, thank you for being here. Your presence affirms our mission, and now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce 2 of my amazing team members, leaders who bring programs to life every day. First, Ms. Stephani Shivers, Chief Innovation Officer and Vice President of Program Development. And second, Ms. Olivia Cohen, Director of Early Stage Services and Engagement Services. But I also want to thank, as Jeff said, my small and mighty staff, from those helping us pick up the phone every day to those receiving and delivering clinical care services. They're all just an incredible part of this organization. And thank you to the board. The board who has seen our mission, seen it through, and to see it grow with the possibilities of what more we can do, particularly as the times get a little bit more difficult in this field. Thank you. Enjoy the evening.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Stephani Shivers, and it is a joy to share with you some of the highlights of our work this past year and how music and music-based interventions play into our broad vision of dementia-related care and support. CaringKind is the heart of support for individuals living with Alzheimer's or another dementia, their family members, along with the professionals and care staff who support them. We are a trusted partner, offering deliberate and intentional programming that addresses the entire journey, everything from emotional support and skill-building education to creative expression, engagement, and empowerment. Now, since this is a research symposium, you might expect me to pull up some data slides for you all with p-values and t-tests to show you our successful outcomes. And trust me, we do have all of that. But instead, let's get to the essence of why those numbers matter. When you hear from our clients, their families, and even our staff, it's clear that something is deeper is happening, something we can't always show with numbers on a chart. So let me share some highlights from our care partner and early stage programs. A little over a year ago, we launched our Partnering Together program, a 10-week small group workshop that transitions into an ongoing support group. Suzanne Bengston, our VP of Family Supports, leads that program, and she talks about it like this. Yes. Taking on the role as a dementia care partner is an overwhelming, lonely, and oftentimes scary experience. This small group workshop provides a safe space and a community where care partners can share their stories, get support, and grieve often unacknowledged losses, all of which are important for healing. And the care partners in the group also speak to how they process emotions, develop hands-on caregiving skills, and discover a community that gets it. Here are their perspectives. This was the best 10 weeks for me in the last several years. It's more helpful than you think, sharing personally with people who understand exactly what you might be going through. Self-consciousness falls away and you feel safe. It's been helpful understanding the landscape ahead, even if it's uncertain. This has taken a lot of the anxiety out of the situation. This program was crucial for me. People I had never known before became quickly trusted friends. Through word of mouth, the Partnering Together program has become so desirable that we are now launching 9 groups in the next few months, and we'll be offering those monthly thereafter and expanding that program to satellite locations. Cognitive stimulation therapy, or CST for short, has grown to be one of our hallmark programs for those living with early-stage symptoms. This evidence-based 8-week program is known internationally as a best practice as it enhances cognition, decreases depression, and increases hope and resilience. Our participants say things like, by sharing thoughts with others like myself, it's slower for me to deteriorate, and I'm more connected to positive thoughts and living. It's been helpful to see that despite the Alzheimer's diagnosis, that it's worthwhile and satisfying to continue to engage in a group with other people, and fun. You start to feel sorry for the people who don't have Alzheimer's when they're missing opportunities like this group. You start to feel sorry for people who don't have Alzheimer's? That's certainly not what we would expect to hear, and that is a true quote. It's not what we would expect to hear from somebody with a terminal brain disease, but it captures the profound impact this program is having on our participants. To Whom I May Concern and Dementia Act 2 are both lived experience programs where individuals living with dementia share their perspectives and personal stories publicly and powerfully. These programs transform negative images and stereotypes into empathic human connections. They empower people living with dementia to combat stigma and propel a different future as educators, advocates, influencers, and change agents. The words you see behind me are from researchers. You all should look at this too. Yeah. The words you see behind me are from researchers, clinicians, and care staff who were asked this simple question before a Dementia Act 2 event. What words come to mind when you think of a person living with dementia? These words look pretty familiar and are typical responses to a question like that. But look what happens to the responses of those same audience members after they hear directly from individuals living with dementia during this program. That is transformational impact. Transformational impact. And it's programs like these that have a deep touch and deep impact that sets CaringKind apart. Programs that not only lift knowledge and skills and confidence, but programs that reopen the door to living with connection, creativity, resilience, and hope. CaringKind is honored to be in this work and to foster a world where hope is not just possible, but rather a world where hope becomes the bedrock for individuals and families living with dementia that we serve. One of the enduring activators of connection, creativity, resilience, and hope is music. And that's the focus of our discussion this evening. And to kick off our conversation tonight, let me introduce you to CaringKind's Director of Early Stage Engagement and Music Programs. Please welcome music therapist and licensed creative arts therapist, Olivia Cohen.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Stephanie. I'm Olivia Cohen, Director of Early Stage and Engagement Services and music therapist here at CaringKind. And as Stephanie mentioned, at CaringKind, we are very intentional in making sure our programs and services are working in concert together, creating a path forward for the families we serve, wherever they may be on their dementia journey. And here's where the music comes in. Our Connect to Music initiatives harness the power of music, weaving it into the very heart of our programs to support families across the continuum of our services. Because if there's one thing that brings people together, sparks memories, and speaks to the soul, it's the role that music plays in our lives. From the very start of life, music shapes us. The rhythmic sound of our mother's heartbeat is the first song we know, lighting the path for our lifelong relationship with music. As children, music sparks creativity and learning, and as we grow, it becomes the soundtrack of our stories, helping us connect with others and shape our identities. In our later years, music is an unwavering companion. It bridges generations and uplifts our spirits. And particularly for those facing cognitive changes, music becomes a lifeline, an extraordinary tool that taps into the resilient neural pathways of the brain, allowing individuals to reconnect with their truest selves. But let me share some examples to highlight the importance of our work at CaringKind by presenting a few of our music therapy and music-based initiatives. The With Music in Mind workshop invites individuals with dementia and their caregivers to share in the joy of music making. This current version blends traditional and modern Chinese song and movement, celebrating cultural heritage and emphasizing the spirit of community across generations. In Musical Segue, we bring people together through song and rhythmic improvisation, helping group members find their words, stir memories, and create moments of connection, even when words fall short. Most recently, our 8-week singing group, led by Beth Stiles, culminated in a recording of her song, Life is Beautiful. Here is a glimpse into that program.
Gratitude for this program because it's been a wonderful 8 weeks.
Music fills my heart and I can't be without it.
Thank you everyone for including us into a new thriving friendship and family, you know. Music connects people. Yeah, and life is beautiful, huh? Yeah. That's a reminder, life is beautiful.
Yeah. Whether you're struggling with memory issues or just loss in general. And this song has just touched my heart and blessed me.
I'm gonna miss my Tuesdays. I step out of my work day to come to see you all and enjoy this. It was, you know, it's something that is gonna be right here. Life is beautiful. Yes, it is beautiful.
And the beauty of Connect to Music is that this is just the beginning. We are committed to expanding and innovating our music initiatives so more families can experience the power of music. Imagine a future where every person facing memory loss has a song, a rhythm, a melody that keeps them connected, not just to the world around them, but to themselves. That's the future we're building. And music is the key. Now I have the pleasure of introducing our moderator, Michael Sheldrick. a global policy entrepreneur, author, and a key force behind Global Citizens' efforts to end extreme poverty and build climate resilience. As a co-founder and chief policy impact and government affairs officer, Michael has spearheaded innovative campaigns that mobilize governments, businesses, and foundations towards transformative change. He's also an adjunct associate professor at Columbia University's School of International and Public Affairs, and the author of Amazon's best-selling book, From Ideas to Impact, a playbook for influencing and implementing change in a divided world. His career merges the worlds of pop and policy, collaborating with iconic artists like Beyoncé, Coldplay, and Rihanna, as well as world leaders like Brazilian President Lula da Silva and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Through events such as the Guinness World Record-winning virtual concert One World Together at Home and the annual Global Citizen Festival, Michael has helped secure over $43 billion for life-changing resources like healthcare, education, and climate resilience, reaching millions across 150 countries. Much like CaringKind embraces the power of music and community to transform the lives of those affected by dementia, Michael harnesses the collective power of culture, policy, and storytelling to tackle global challenges. From co-founding Global Citizen while still a student to championing new financial models for climate resilience, his work showcases how creative partnerships can dismantle barriers and drive bold innovation, whether on the stage or in our local neighborhoods. We're honored to have him guide us tonight in exploring how breakthroughs in music, sound, and dementia research can inspire hope, enrich lives, and unite communities. Everyone, please welcome Michael Sheldrick.
Well, thank you, Olivia, and it's really wonderful to be here today. I was really honored and humbled to be invited to moderate this panel with such an esteemed guest of experts and leaders in this field. As you can probably tell, for anyone who knows Global Citizen, and every September we do the big music festival on the Great Lawn of Central Park, we believe in the power of music to change lives, move society, move hearts and minds, change policy, and motivate people to take action. But also, the thing that really stood out to me about this panel topic this evening was not only is it the power of music, but we're also looking at combining that with how to address dementia and Alzheimer's. And that has a particularly personal subject to me because one of my heroes is my mom. And for the last 30 years or so, I grew up on the other side of the world in Perth, Western Australia, which many people say, where is that? And I often tell people in New York, literally, if you were to drill a hole through the ground, through the core of the earth, you would come out on the other side where I grew up. And my parents, by the way, are really grateful now that I have my 16-year-old daughter that I picked the furthest place on the map from them to see their granddaughter. But my mum has worked as an aged care nurse and specifically with people, elderly people with dementia for the last 30 years. And she's really made it her quest to give people back their dignity. And so I just want to begin by paying tribute to all the healthcare workers out there, those who really, it's hard work and it's emotional, so let's give them all a shout out. And we're in the presence of an incredible panel, and I want to introduce them all briefly to you so we can get into tonight's discussion. We have here Sarah Lenz-Locke, who is the Vice President of Policy and Brain Health for AARP, and she's also the Executive Director of the Global Council on Brain Health as well. We have Dr. Connie Tomaino with us this evening as well. Dr. Tomaino, she is the Executive Director and Co-Founder alongside the late Dr. Oliver Sacks of the Institute for Music and Neurological Function. Thank you, Dr. Connie. We appreciate having you here this evening as well. We also We also have Dr. Joy Allen, who is the chair of music therapy and the founding director of the Music and Health Institute at Berklee College of Music. Dr. Allen, thank you for being with us today. And of course, from CaringKind, we have Stephani Shivers, who you've already heard from. She's the Chief Innovation Officer, who's dedicated more than 35 years towards advancing this agenda, and is also a fully trained occupational therapist and nationally recognized thought leader on this agenda. Thank you, Stephani, for your work. And lastly, we have Olivia. Olivia is CaringKind's Director of Early Stage and Engagement Services, and she's also a board-certified music therapist with over 12 years' experience in dementia care. So thank you, Olivia, for being here. So a couple of housekeeping rules. There will be notes going around, so you can take the index cards, you can put out any questions you want, and you can hand it to people in the center. About 20 minutes in, people will be coming down, look out for them, give them a card with your question on, and in about 25, 30 minutes, we'll throw it to some questions from the audience. And don't be shy. We've got plenty of questions to get on with, but we definitely want to hear from you in the audience as well. But first of all, the question, music and brain health. You know, how do those two agendas relate to one another? How does music influence and shape brain health? And Sarah, I want to put you on the spot first of all, and come to you to unpack this connection.
So thank you for that question, actually, because I have learned, I'm a lawyer by training, and in the work of the Global Council on Brain Health, where we have brought experts from all over the world together to really dig into that question, there is nothing that affects the mind all at the same time as much as music. It actually affects all of the different regions in your brain and stimulates them all at once, and there's nothing quite like that. And so I will quote the experts from the Global Council in saying there's probably nothing so powerful as music's impact on the brain. And that's one of the reasons that they postulate that even in the very latest stages of music, that it reaches people. And that's an amazing thing.
Joy, I was wondering just on this point, what is it about music that, just to Sarah's point, reaches people in the very late stages of dementia? It's something that they remember more than anything else. Why is that?
So I'll go back to what Olivia had pointed out, in that we all are musical beings. So it starts right with that rhythm of the heartbeat. And so if we go back to that and we remember, all of our parts of us respond to music in different ways. And then building off of what Sarah had said, with the regions of our brain, so whether it's the frontal lobe, the occipital, all of the different regions of our brain are activated, but there's also these things called neurotransmitters. So if you get really into some of the science behind that, the neurotransmitters have to do things like dopamine, that feel-good chemical, serotonin, cortisol, all of those things. So not only is it firing in the different regions of the brain, but the neurochemicals that go with that. We don't know every exact thing, but in terms of the later stages with dementia in particular, we know that hearing is one of the last things to go. Music, and they're still taking that in, and they're still activated and captivated by that. But we also know it has to do with memories, which there's some kind of juxtaposition with that. But if we even think about, if you go back to your own, take a moment for you to think, an immediate memory that comes into your mind. And there's going to be a connection to it because it has that ability where you hear a song and you're like, wait a minute, that transports me back into that. You may not be able to name the song, you may not be able to name the people, but it's that flash of connection. And that's what it really is about. The music is connecting in those different parts of the brain. And I'll give you a quick little tidbit. Yeah. We also know that jigsaw puzzles, believe it or not, music is more cognitively stimulating and creates more activation than even jigsaw puzzles. That's pretty impressive, right? If you think about those 1,000-piece puzzles even.
Wow. Connie, just on that point, is it particular types of music that triggers memory? Is it happy, sad? Is it particular types of emotion, or is it all kinds of music?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because, like Joy had said, our lived experience actually informs the type of music that we're going to respond to. Mm-hmm. And over our lifetime, we build associations with that music. And so depending on the person and the music that they've made these strong associations with, the music that will affect them the most is the one that has the strongest emotional and personal connection. And we know from research that the more a piece of music is associated with time, place, person, and a strong emotional connection, the more likely a person, even at the end stages of dementia, will show a response and connect to that.
So really, it's any type.
Any type.
Powerful. It's more the intensity of the emotion.
And the personal nature of it.
So Stephani, you're CaringKind's Chief Innovation Officer. You know, bringing these two agendas together, the power of music, dementia research. I mean, in terms of your programs, how did this come about? How did you bring these two together? And have you got any examples of some of the programs you're running just to deploy the research we've just heard about how music can really, you know, bring people back to their loved ones, if not forever, at least for a moment in time?
Well, CaringKind, for those of you in the room, probably most of you, or some of you at least, know that we're embarking on our 47th year here as an organization. And I would say part of the longevity of the organization is because CaringKind has been consistently kind of on the cusp of what's happening in the research realm and what's happening in the world with individuals and families who are impacted by Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia. And so as we have grown in our understanding of brain science and what's actually happening in the brain, both on the health side as well as on the care side, it's a natural segue, musical segue, which I'm going to pun here in a second to Olivia. There's a natural marriage there for us to be involved in this space of bringing these realms together, because music is so intentional for people, particularly in the late stages, but we can use music all the way across the continuum to have people kind of being engaged with their brains in meaningful ways. And so we're excited to have music and to be launching more and more music-based interventions. And I would say that, you know, as an organization, you know, we're in that sweet spot of really bringing the best research together and putting it into the real-world practice with actual families who are impacted by this. But I'm going to kick it to Olivia to talk about, you know, some of the programs and their power.
So I think in relation to CaringKind's music programs, what our intention was really weaving it into the fabric of our programs. We work with families across the continuum, and because music is so adaptable, it's malleable, you can use it in so many different forms, whether it's singing, active music making, rhythmic, listening to music. There's so many different ways to use it, and so it reaches people in so many different stages and also meets the needs for people wherever they may be. And so one of the ways we're looking at music at CaringKind is in our community programs that we offer in terms of our With Music in Mind. So that is a very intentional program out in the community for caregivers and the person with the diagnosis to engage in a shared musical experience together. It kind of takes them out of their role of caregiver and person being cared of, and now they're in the music together. And also we have our musical segue program. Stephani lined me up perfectly for that, which is, it's a program to help support transitions for folks who would benefit from support with verbal expression, and we're singing songs that can help stimulate the brain to then help get those words out a little bit more easier. Or maybe it's just sharing songs together and a memory is sparked, and from that we're having a conversation from a memory back in high school and hearing that song you heard from a long time ago. And then just recently with our Connect to Music program, where they recorded, it had this experience of singing songs together, and then it culminated with a recording, which is a very exciting experience to have, but also it's a legacy project as well, because you have an actual recording of voices that now families can share after their loved ones are changing in different ways and being able to capture their voice forever.
I think it's special how you're just talking about how you've, and I take my mom and her patients or residents that she works with, and you form this close relationship to them over many years and with the family, but how this transforms the caregiver individual relationship. I guess putting yourselves in the shoes of the caregiver, in individuals like my mother, for instance, what is the advice? I mean, in terms of scaling this, training or providing this, like how do you use the power, how do you maximize the power of music in this regard?
So I think there's so many, music is such a great tool because it's something that can easily be taught to others in certain ways in how to use music. So we know that music is effective when it's your personalized music that you enjoy. So if I were to listen to Stephani's music, it may not have the same impact as me because of my life history or just my personal preferences. And so really getting to be a music detective and understand what's the music of the person that you're caring for is just a really easy tool. And then finding the music and tailoring it even more to create music and playlists or opportunities to have comforting music, maybe in times where somebody needs something more calming, or maybe something energetic, and incorporating movement. We can all use our bodies with music, and we all feel music in our bodies. So those are easy tools that can be done with 1, 2, 3.
So Sarah, coming back to you, when we look at the power of music and you take the steps that Olivia just mentioned, are there any downside or potential risk factors that we should be aware of in terms of incorporating this increasingly in terms of dementia care?
Well, in general, I would say that the more music, the better.
Yep, okay, that's good.
But there are a few caveats with respect to that. So, and maybe we want to go and talk to some of the music therapists in this issue specifically, but I was surprised as a layperson to understand that there are instances where music can be too much and you need to tailor it in appropriate ways. So for example, there's theoretically music which can really distress somebody. Music has sometimes been used as torture for people.
Yeah.
And so you really, for the most part, it's a safe and effective intervention for people living with dementia. But you do have to personalize it, because I can't imagine, for example, being stuck in a room having to listen to rap constantly. Like, it would drive me crazy. I would love it a little bit, but if I had to hear it all the time, no. Right? So if you think about a person who's challenged with cognition and maybe expressing themselves, you need to make sure you're paying attention to the clues they're giving you so that you're assisting them and helping them with pleasurable music instead of stressful music. And so
I was going to add to that excuse me, that people with frontal temporal dementia actually lose their perception of melody, or they can lose their perception of melody. So someone who used to love to listen to music may actually say that it's noisy and irritating, or at least they may look like they're distressed.
Wow.
Because what they're hearing is static and noise, where they used to be, classical music. And the other piece is that people may have a seizure disorder, too. And so certain frequencies of sound can actually trigger that.
Wow.
I was just going to say, I was going to build off of that too, is that, keeping in mind preferences and our natural aging process. As our body ages, our senses change. So when we're using music, absolutely not on 24/7. Imagine if you had background on 24/7, it doesn't become effective anymore because it becomes blurred in the background. But simple things in terms of as we age, our hearing ability, higher pitches, goes first, right? And so being able to put things in lower tones, but that's part of the reason why some music becomes detrimental. Because if we go back to, I'll use your example of rap, it's a lot of lower bass. So that's all they're going to hear versus hearing the lyrics within that. So the more that we can be aware of those preferences, but that doesn't mean we can't use different types of music, but how we modulate the music, and so that we're using and changing the music into lower tones, that we're taking the tempo and slowing it down, because again, when someone's talking, as you age, it's like, slow down, I can't process it that fast, right? It's the same thing. So if using it, lowering our tones, or lowering the tones of the music, but also slowing down so there's a time to process it, and use it in doses based on what is it that you need from the music right now. Do you need it to help with physical activity versus sleep versus social connectivity?
I always think on discussions like this, I always think stories are some of the most powerful ways to demonstrate, whether it's the power of music or whatever you're talking about as an intervention. But just from whoever would like to step forward and share, but is there a particular individual story, a powerful story or example where you've seen this up close, or you've heard a story about a particular individual and what music has impacted to them? And maybe they were early on in the stages of dementia, maybe they were late stage dementia, but is there a particular story or experience any of you would care to share?
So many, it's a hard question. I'll jump in because I don't get to talk about music too much. We have, there's a couple that's been involved in a few of our early stage services, and they're both music lovers. And he, the gentleman who actually has Alzheimer's, is losing his language. And they have actually started to use music to connect. And they send each other musical love notes when communication has failed.
I know a couple who, the wife had Alzheimer's disease, and she was very difficult to care for. And he would have trouble getting her out of her chair, and she was very combative. But they used to love to dance. They used to go dancing all the time. And so he found that if he put dance music on, he'd go and maybe Duke Ellington or something like that. He'd put his hand out and say, "Hon, let's dance." And immediately she would take his hand, and he would dance her to the bathroom. He would dance her to the shower, because she was happy to do it. And for him, it was a way also to connect to her, because they had that togetherness and closeness that he couldn't have otherwise. But what a great way of using it.
So one other story, my father was not musical. As they say, he could not carry a tune in a bag. But towards the end of his life, he was a veteran of World War II in the Marine Corps. Yeah. And we were sitting together in the hospital, and all of a sudden, he decided to sing the anthem of the Marine Corps.
Wow.
And my husband and I were sitting there, and it was such a bonding moment and a peace connecting moment for us. We knew he was still there, and we knew the power of that. And every once in a while, when I want to think about my dad, I'll sing the anthem along.
Wow.
Love that.
That's really nice. And I'm sure we can all relate and share stories. And by the way, if anyone wants to share it or write it down in the card, we'd love to hear from you. I guess, Connie, I want to come back to you, because we've spoken, I think everyone in the room is convinced just by hearing this, right? Music has power. It can transform the individual caregiver relationship. It can be transformative if scaled. But the question is what's the next step? And how do you address this at scale? Because as societies age, one thing I'm always struck when I go home to Australia, when I see my friends' parents who I grow up with, it always seems more and more people are dealing with dementia. How do we scale this? And is this part of the research agenda? I mean, what's next on the research space, on the horizon, that could really unlock this potential?
Sure, there's so many things we know about how and why music works and how it's effective. I think all of us here are working with others on finding ways to make music more accessible. So whether that's using streaming services or creating personalized playlists or working with technology that can actually pick up tone of voice or facial recognition, the thing is to give access to music, because music technically is available to all of us 24/7, but using it intentionally and training caregivers, family members, and staff at various facilities on how to use it effectively and giving them those tools is really important. There has been quite a bit of research recently, for example, on using personalized playlists in reducing agitation and pharmacological treatment. So we know that there's evidence-based research that shows this is effective, and we know that we want access to be available to everybody.
And when you say personalized playlists, just for everyone's benefit, is that built based on what they listen to, or is it based on the types of music? Or?
Sure. If the person is able to share themselves, obviously, we can ask them what their favorite music is, but many times the person can't. So we're relying on family caregivers to tell us about the type of music they listen to, how they use music in their life, if they like to dance, if they're moved to music. Music therapists do assessments with individuals on seeing how they respond to music, and then based on that, we can do playlists. There has been some software programs where we can put types of music, genres of music, and then have the caregiver observe which songs the person is more responsive to. And then hopefully with AI or whatever in the future to really specialize those playlists even more based on the current likes, the continual likes a person has with certain reactions that they have to certain types of music.
Hearing you and Sarah think, I couldn't help but reflect, generally at the Global Citizen Festival, we secure bands that everyone likes, that appeals to all demographics. I do remember one year, and if there's any Metallica fans in the audience, I'm not offending anyone, but fair to say they were headlining, and when we got to the end of the night, Metallica came on, half of the audience left and said, oh no, get us out of here. And so I was thinking maybe for them, Metallica wouldn't be on their personal playlist.
You never
maybe
know.
for others,
you never know.
It could. And maybe you never know.
Years from now.
Maybe it could resurface something that was repressed. That's true. Stephani, what about you? Advice on the research agenda and what's next? And if there's people here looking at this, and looking at funding, research and development, what's the big gap? What's the big need? What's the uncharted territory right now? What's the unknowns, I guess? Yeah.
Well, I'm going to take it two directions because I know there are researchers in the audiences, and I want to get to you in a second here. But I also want to give a shout out because the two women who are here are both very involved in actually creating scalable options and actually really creating models where Connie's got a great book out recently that's kind of educating people on how to bring music to the public. Jill's got a great one too on the a training for community members on bringing music to the public that Joy's doing. And I think the key for success is us all working together to figure out what's feasible. We have great programs and services, but unless researchers and organizations like CaringKind and families, the right people have to be at the table to all contribute to the conversation of what's actually going to work. So how does an organization like CaringKind scale music-based interventions? Well, we have to be at the research table and involved in those discussions to actually shape the interventions. So from the get-go, it's possible. And I'm happy to report that there are a number of researchers in the audience who actually really look to us as partners, which is wonderful that we can actually shape an agenda together for bringing music. I also want to give a shout out
to the Music and Dementia Research Network that's actually happening here that I'm a part of, and there's some folks in the audience here who are really looking at what are the mechanisms that actually cause a music-based intervention to work, and how do we how do we actually get the science and the funding for science to establish that evidence base so that we can roll things out. And so there's some great things that are happening on music research in dementia, music research in pain, lots of great things there. And Sarah's part of the Brain Health Action Collaborative with AARP, who's also looking at music as an intervention and how do we actually bring music, actionable music programs out into the world. And so we're looking at CaringKind, we're looking to scale music programs through what we call satellite models. You know, we do great things here, but we are one entity in one city, and even we serve the larger population here, but there's gotta be a way for us to equip other people, other musicians, other music therapists, other music making and music interested volunteers and personnel who want to push things forward. And so it really is this how do you scale anything successfully? You've got to work with the people who are boots on the ground and equip them. And thankfully, music is actually plausible. It's plausible for us to scale music interventions with some of the things that particularly these three amazing women are actually championing forward. So thanks for that.
I'd like to add to that. People should know, especially if you're researchers, that a team from the NIH and Sherry Robb, part of the Sound Health Network, has published a toolkit that identifies the types of things that researchers should name when they're doing a research study related to music. So we know the type of music, how it was delivered, who delivered the music. Was it an active intervention? Was it a passive listening intervention? One of the challenges in making music-based interventions recognized as a viable service and a really meaningful service is the fact that a lot of research doesn't have a big enough sample size, or it hasn't been a double-blind controlled study. So within these toolkits, there's not only the types of assessment tools to use, but also giving researchers the language so they can share information through their papers, so we can look at and do meta-analyses that then show greater evidence and purpose.
Yeah, Sarah, and then Joy, keen to hear from you on how your institute is scaling, but Sarah, first here.
Just to jump in to say that from a policy perspective, this research that Connie is talking about is so essential in order to make the case. But one of the things that ARP has been doing with the NeuroArts Blueprint and with Aspen Health is looking at the economic support for these issues. Yeah. And I have a few numbers that I've jotted down that I want to share with you, because working with KPMG first for the first economic analysis, we found that the cost of music engagement for people living with dementia was about $816 a year when you talk about with therapists. But the cost of care for people given, this was before the new anti-amyloid medications come out, but is $3,600. And so we're looking at enormous savings for these kinds of music interventions. And so we found that KPMG, the widespread adoption of music engagement could actually generate $996 million to $2.3 billion in economic benefit. And we're just looking at the tax generated for the economic benefit and new jobs. And so now we're looking at the quality of life improvements. So this is a new phase of the economic estimate. And that estimate is looking at return on investment of 2.4 times the investment. And that's just a tremendous number. Incredible. That new report will be coming out in May when we have all of our T's crossed and our I's dotted. But really thinking about the economic argument behind music is a really important policy element if we're going to get the support we need to have these scalable interventions really make the difference for people.
Joy, did you want to come in here,
Sure.
share your experience?
I think I might connect all the dots in a second.
Brilliant.
So a couple of things that we are working on. There's amazing research out there, and yes, we absolutely have to work together. And part of what we do at the Music and Health Institute is have collaborations between academia, practitioners, biotech, technology companies, pharmaceutical companies, and more, knowing that it's together that we'll move things forward. But within the research aspect, you've probably already picked up on tonight, it's okay, we've heard music is phenomenal and it's great and it does these things, but if I'm the caregiver at home, how do I know what to do? Or how do I find the information, right? And so and what do we mean by music? I mean, you've heard active, you've heard listening, you've heard playing. So what we're really doing is trying to make the information as accessible as possible and also putting together a shared language, because one of the problems with the research is people are using different terms. And so we built a taxonomy and a research collection. There's several research collections, but I'll talk about the dementia one right now, is we have a collection if you go to the Music and Health Institute Research Repository on dementia, and you can click on that, and you can search by outcome measures, you can search by type of intervention, you can put in songwriting, you could put in sleep or sundowning, and get the research literature, which is great if you're a researcher, if you know how to read it. What we're doing next is putting that together in 2 briefs. So on the pillars of health and areas of brain health, so that everyone who's in, everything that we're doing is trying to make the information accessible to communities. So that someone who's looking for something and says, my loved one is having a really, really difficult time at sleep, how can music be used to do this? And then give ideas and interventions. And then we built a music and health innovation studio, and that's to start with the scalability, right? And so we work with researchers and academics and students, and we put forth challenges and things with like the dementia challenge. We're working right now on building a platform, because just like we just said, how do I find the information? That people can have a one-stop shop with music and say, okay, again, where's the information, whether I'm looking for immediate things that I could do with a loved one or programs that might be in my area. So we're trying to build scalability with that, but we're also working on other technologies and working with tech companies to make sure that interventions and technologies and app-based solutions that are coming available for accessibility are grounded in the science. And that's really important, not to make things that are not going to leave someone or give them false hope, but are really working together and basing it on the science, but bringing in that accessibility. And that's where community partners like CaringKind become so important, because we need access to people to test. We need people, focus groups. We need the ability to say, okay, we know this from the research, but what are the biggest pain points in the community that we can then bring back up to the research? It's that full circle scalability model that we need. Yep.
So just while we're waiting for the cards, the questions to come in on the cards, just one speed round for each of you. Sarah, you mentioned policy interventions, and Joy, you just spoke about technology interventions. From each of you, is there one policy or technological intervention? I mean, we could all want something, and I'm sure you've got a shopping list, and we could, say if you got in front of the right person, this is everything for this agenda. But if there was one policy or technological intervention, what would it be? And anyone want to go first? Connie, you go first.
Definitely some type of reimbursement and support.
Reimbursement and support.
Yes.
Yep. Simple, but very powerful. Anyone else?
I think the more apps and things that are much more accessible. We're so hands-on with our devices right now, and a lot of times that having that accessibility when you're at home and you're not sure what to do, so being able to vet certain apps. And I feel like at Connie's symposium that I went to recently, learned a number of technological apps and interventions that are available out there that we can all access, and that just expands the reach even more to what we can do at home.
I'm going to put something crazy out there, so don't judge me. I would love for there to be, whether it's some type of YouTube channel or regular television programming that really engaged people in homes and weekly programming or daily programming on engaging with music just versus just passively, but actual engagement with and have it as a weekly.
There's actually
Is it coming?
There's something called Sage Stream. I can't say this is a commercial for them, but Sage Stream actually hires incredible musicians. It's live online and also recorded, where they have the person doing the program, and an agency can subscribe to it. And so every week they have live programs, but they also have somebody checking for feedback, and they can see the individuals in the program, and so there could be a give and take too. So it's just not a flat, entertainment program.
Yeah.
And there's others like that too, but this is just an example of what's coming possible.
That's great.
Then the only thing that I would add is from a policy intervention, that if policymakers actually realized the improvement and counted the outcome in improvement of mental well-being as opposed to anything else, that would be an amazing number.
Well, in Building Sarah, one of the challenges we have right now with outcomes, and this is again where we need more cross-disciplinary collaborations, is that a lot of the outcomes that measure effectiveness of music-based interventions are clinically based and not community-based. And so there's not great measures other than general well-being 5-point scales is what we're using right now, because we don't have robust, and you don't want a 30-point scale. So that cultural piece that comes into play as well.
So I'm going to go to some questions now. We've got a lot here.
There's quite a bit.
Thank you. Often you're at these discussions and no one submits anything. I think this is not the case here. So a lot of interest. So I'm going to put out 3 questions in the first round, and then people can engage with them based on which ones you want to or which ones you want to ignore. Up to you. But just on the subject of technology, someone suggested, they said, well, they had 2 questions. They said, can you talk about the simulation, its benefits, and how best to administer? But then the second question was, can we use artificial intelligence to generate more rich music and measure reactions, body language, facial expression? So that's one question. The second question is, research shows that Alzheimer's is much more prevalent in those with Down syndrome and other IDDs. Have you taken this into consideration in your research and experience? And then some of these questions are a bit long, so forgive me. I will come back and read them when we get there. What is the plan for CaringKind to share, disseminate the benefits of Music Matter programs with communities, assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing in order to create the transformational impact throughout the care continuum? So three very different questions for each of you.
I can talk a little bit about the technology from the first one. There are some programs out presently that do make it easy to access music and then to customize it based on individual responses. I think one of the conversations, at least I've heard of, is finding tech companies that can fine-tune things like voice, tone of voice, and facial expression as a way of triggering preferred music. So if any tech people are in the audience, now the cameras on the iPads and different interfaces, we have a way of really delivering music on the spot to somebody, especially if we know what their preferred music is. And then through an algorithm can, fine-tune that to be the more preferred music. So if somebody, responds to Frank Sinatra or to the Beatles, those types of playlists can even become, more prevalent for that individual. So looking at tone of voice, looking at facial expression, those are important things that can really help with service delivery.
Another thing we're doing right now with one of the projects in the Innovation Studio with technology and AI is really looking at, most people have moved around throughout their life, and we know that memories within dementia is really that later adolescent, young adulthood areas. And for people who have moved or may have immigrated, having access to those sounds in those environments is not necessarily possible. So we're working on developing, it's a project with students called Sonic Bridges, where there can be global opportunities to capture the sounds of different environments and the music within those to help with those memories. And there's an intergenerational component within that as well, because we oftentimes forget we may not have access to those anymore. Those sounds and those memories, or that particular type of experiences that become so important. And the other thing I would add with AI is that oftentimes we forget that there's other ways to engage in music, and even learning music. An individual with dementia can still learn to play an instrument. And that becomes incredibly important, and being able to use technology within that. And we have to think differently of how we do that with an engagement. Don't think classically trained, but think what we do within pop music, and it's chords, right? Or playing just a melody line, and there's the opportunity, again, with using technology and AI to have piano choirs, and it's something that is a different way and activating different parts of the brain, and it becomes really important as well.
Yeah, on the question of the people with Down syndrome and earlier onset of dementia, I have to say I would think that that would be a great area of additional research. You all may know more than I do, but I know I haven't personally come across that. But thinking about gearing it to people of a certain age, you were starting to go down this path. When you're a certain age of, 15 to 22, 23, where music has a potential, really, it grips you at that stage of your life and your development. So people who have, I would imagine people who have Down syndrome and are in that age space, that would be a really important time, and to look at the impact of music that was popular during that area that they likely would be exposed to, and thinking about it from that perspective. But I love that question, because it's an area that I think needs further exploration.
Absolutely, and there's some research related to cognition and Down syndrome, but not specific. There's so much research that needs to be done within dementia to begin with, but get in pockets.
So we have some questions, quite a few on policy, and one is actually specific to you, Sarah. It's a two-part question, and it states, is AARP concerned that the current administration is defunding Alzheimer's research and threatening to dismantle Social Security and Medicaid? And can AARP help their constituents understand what is at stake and motivate them to vote for policymakers that will safeguard the interests of our elder citizens? And related, and by the way, others can weigh in on that as well if you've got something relevant to say. Another question, policy related, is how close are we in this country to having state and federal funding for organizations like ours that use music, and this was from the Community Music Network, so like ours that use music for health, well-being, and community? How supportive is the music industry of these initiatives, and how easy is it to get special blanket licensing for programs we are developing for both in-person and digital programs? So,
good question.
Yeah.
I'm having a conversation with Universal on Friday at Berklee around that very thing in terms of music licensing. The music industry is very interested, and they haven't always been invited to the table in the conversations at the national level, because a lot of times things happen within academia or in the research realm. But the music industry is absolutely interested because it's another product line. It's another area of economic investment, and they're looking at the innovation economy. So definitely I would say the music industry is interested in the licensing aspects, and they're trying to figure it out as well, but they've already have all of the labels have startups and work that is going on in the digital innovation space, particularly related to music and health.
So with respect to the question about ARP, we are absolutely looking and concerned about these issues. Social Security, of course, I don't know if you've been looking at social media and some of the ads that we're putting out. We're mounting a full-scale defense of the institutions. I will just say that Friday night late, you may have been hearing Thursday's reorganization of the Health and Human Services Department, and ARP is chair of the Leadership Council of Aging Organizations. And we are just sent a letter to Secretary Kennedy asking about the dissolution of all of these programs that are extremely important to older adults and what will be happening to them. And we're trying to get our questions answered. And I would say that the work of the National Institutes of Health and National Institutes of Aging and the concerns that we have over the threats to funding, I can tell you there's a great deal of concern about what's happening and what needs to happen in order to continue this work. We've made a lot of progress in the last decade. We cannot afford to lose it.
That's right. I'll jump
So,
in.
thank you. So I'm going to attempt to, we've only got just over a minute left, so we might go over. So I'm going to attempt to squeeze in 5 questions here. And so that could be 1 each, depending on how we go. First one is a very specific question, and so someone might be able to answer it. Have any of you seen the documentary film Alive Inside? Okay, great. So we've got some. And we had some questions around research methodology and sample size. There's a question here, have you conducted your research amongst different cultural groups? And if so, what similarities, differences have you found with the results and impact on different cultural groups? Then the next question is, are there links for research in the literature about music interventions on the CaringKind website? If not, can you please go through the website's platforms, articles, and other research where it can be found? So Stephani and Olivia, we look to you for that.
We have a new website launching.
You're ready.
On the new website.
This was a question from earlier around how do we define early stage? Is that from the point of view of the caregiver or the patient?
Good question.
Oh, and last but not least, this was actually, well, it was a question for Connie. Can you comment on the music and memory program? And then there was a question for me. Any hints on who might be performing at this year's Global Citizen? Easy one. If you sign up to my newsletter, Become a Global Citizen, you'll find out early June, and you'll get your tickets. And I'll drop hints at the end if you want. But those 5 questions.
So let me talk about music and memory, which and then anybody who saw the Alive Inside film was about that program and using personalized playlists to help not only people with dementia, but people with mental health issues as well. Music and Memory is now a program of the Institute for Music and Neurologic Function. I actually have been on the founding board of that organization and helped Dan get that started. Dan Cohen, who was the founder of Music and Memory. So that program is still available. It's still available to agencies all around the country. I think presently there's over 500 agencies that are certified as music and memory providers. And then just recently, the Institute started an online training program for people called Senior Care Music Specialists, to allow people to be trained to use music more effectively in senior care. So that's not for music therapists specifically, but for people who want to just be able to use music more effectively.
And that's part of the earlier question about how does CaringKind scale? It's through opportunities like that we have to go, we can't do everything ourselves, and so how do we train people and facilitate opportunities for satellite programs like that where training can happen from real true experts.
Anything you want to say?
There's so many questions. We can talk for hours, but I would just give a shout out to CaringKind. They are on the advisory board for the Brain Health Action Collaborative. And the whole idea there is to think about ways that we can scale up interventions. There's one on music, arts, and design in the pillar, and so Stephani has been a great collaborator. The idea is wherever you are in your brain health journey, that we have something that music can do to benefit you. And so shout out to CaringKind for its fabulous collaboration.
Yep.
Joy or Olivia, any last words?
I kind of just wanted, thinking about the early stage and talking about stages, I just want to quickly plug some of our education that we have on our website. We do have a calendar of education seminars, webinars that you can attend on Zoom, and if you're not able to, we have an education hub. But Stephani also just did a talk on staging and abilities, so that's a very helpful talk to kind of learn what that looks like across all the stages.
And I would just say, keeping with the theme of education, is that we did start a community health musician program to work with members in the community that are self-identified musicians. Doesn't mean you've had to have formal training as a musician. You might be someone who dabbled in guitar, dabbled in piano or voice. But we have a training program specifically designed to create more programs in communities and more programs in community spaces using music with older adults and individuals impacted by dementia, amongst other things. And that is what we need to do, is to have music more infused into spaces, whether it's more inclusive practices in church spaces, to community centers, to intergenerational programming at preschools and schools that can happen to make our communities more community-based and music-centered. Yeah.
Well, I want to finish in closing. I think we've heard some tremendous interventions, but we've also heard hopeful stories. They're inspiring stories. We've also heard about solutions that can scale. We've heard about the gaps, but we've also heard about the opportunity. And it's easy to be pessimistic right now with so many issues going on when funding is being cut or it feels like the world is against our agenda. But pessimism is not a luxury that any of us can afford. And I think those of you here today have heard firsthand the dedication going on. I think it comes down to all of us. And one small story of hope and reflection that I was thinking about coming onto this panel is about 2 years ago or 18 months ago, as I was me and my wife, she was about to give birth to our daughter, I got a phone call from my mom on the other side of the world. She was at work, and she said, "Do you remember this gentleman called Lenz?" And you mentioned World War II survivor. And she said, "There's this older gentleman, he served in the war, and he said he knows you." And he said that when you was a kid, you used to walk your dog down the park, I don't know, decades ago, and he used to tell you stories about the war. Was that you? And I said, "Yeah, I think it might have been." And so my mom turns out her phone, and she FaceTimes with Lenz, who was 105 years old.
Wow.
He was born in 1917, and he told me about how he got married in England, Veterans Day or Remembrance Day, November the 11th, 1940. Just started telling me this story out of nowhere, as if we had known each other, not seen each other in 20 years, but as if we had just seen each other yesterday. And he told me this one story about being isolated and alone as Nazi Germany was invading France. And he described this scene where he was going up this hill. And he said, "All I remember is going up this hill, looking down at the grass, and a great shadow came above the grass. And he looked up thinking it was a cloud he was going to see, but it wasn't. It was 200 German warplanes blocking out every inch of the sky." And he said, I stood there like a stick, and I thought I was a goner. But they flew over, he ran around the hill. He said, "I saw this abandoned car." He said, "It was an American one, you beauty." He got in the car, made it on the last boat before France fell. And I just remember saying to him, because he went on to another story without almost pausing a beat, and I said, "Len," I said, "how did you ever give up? Did you lose hope in that moment? Because things can seem pretty bad right now, but you were staring it in the face." And he just turned around and he said to me, as we was looking at our phone, and he was looking at my mum's phone, he said, "No, we just kept on saying to ourselves, we haven't got much, but we're not running away. We'll give it a go." We're not running away. We'll give it a go. And I think you all agree with me with our panel tonight, what we're here. If there's one thing we can all do is give it a go. And so thank you for your support. Thank you for our panel. Thank you all.
Good evening. I am Betty Brennan, CaringKind Board Member.
And I'm Ed Chisek, Chief Research Grants and Evaluation Officer at CaringKind.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And thank you to our brilliant moderator and panelists. We are committed to bringing the best in new research to our community. Tonight, we are proud to announce that we have launched a new research initiatives department, and I am proud to serve as the chair of the Board Research Committee.
As part of the initiative, we're showcasing more opportunities where our CaringKind community can participate in research.
And we plan to provide funding to external research projects that align with our mission.
And we're conducting our own non-pharmacological research, piloting new programs, and trying out evidence-based interventions in real-world settings.
And we are taking steps to ensure that people living with dementia and those who support them directly have input into the design and implementation of research projects.
And speaking of input, please use the code on the screen or in your program to fill out a very brief feedback survey. And while you're looking at your program, take note of our upcoming events, our June 9th Forget-Me-Not Gala at Cipriani, and our October 18th walk in Central Park.
Finally, before you leave, please stop by our Ask the Expert table, where you can chat with our navigators to learn more about our programs and services. Thank you again, and have a wonderful evening.